Redo it. That's fine. All right. Well, welcome back. A little caveat. I am on Wi-Fi and I've noticed that this Wi-Fi cuts out once an hour. And so I'm about 10 minutes away from it cutting out, but maybe it won't do it this time because I've jumped off earlier. So we'll see what happens. But if I do go away, just know that I will come back. So just hang out and wait. So that's that. So this is our last module called Monsters Under the Bed. And in this process, I've had you exploring a lot of contributing factors and blocks to greater intimacy in your relationships. So if you'll remember, we worked on tapping to explore fears and resistances that are hindering you, and looking at how you can have more freedom. Today's class is really referring to sexually related memories that are lurking and playing a role in experiences that are coming up that are from the past, right? Things that are causing physical pain, that are causing sexual dysfunction, that may be restricting your innate experience and ability to experience, feel, express love. Your sexuality may be getting in the way of choices and closeness and intimacy. So really in this class, we're going to be looking at what were your childhood experiences around sexuality, what were adolescent experiences, and we'll look at sexual harm as well. So sexual injury. Sexual injury can be defined as being coerced, manipulated, tricked, or forced into sexual activity. And this can be any time. Right? I think often people think of sexual injury as happening when we're younger, but it can happen in adulthood as well. It can be adolescent sexual abuse. And I'm not just talking about physical contact as well. I'm talking about everything from fondling, voyeurism, exposure, oral genital contact, digital penetration, even energetic exposure, right? Where you sat on an uncle's lap and felt really awkward about it, or you had a woman in your life that felt like she was undressing you with her eyes that didn't feel appropriate, right? So all of these things actually can affect our ability to feel safe sexually, okay? So I want to be really clear that sexual traumatic experiences are what I refer to as big T traumas. Well, in the whole industry, right? They're referred to as big T traumas. A big T trauma is defined as any kind of event in someone's life where a person felt helpless, where they felt a lack of control, emotional and or physical overwhelm, as well as a sense of being threatened with physical harm, right? So sometimes we think of big T traumas as like actual like rapes or accidents or earthquakes or things like that, but it can be any time that the body feels threatened. So all types of sexual injury, when we're working with clients, we consider all of those as big T traumas. So working to heal these should be done with an experienced trauma-informed practitioner. So whether that be a counselor, a psychotherapist, an EMDR therapist, an emotional freedom techniques practitioner like I am, an NLP trainer who's sexually and trauma-informed, right? So just know that you're looking for someone in that specialty. Sexually related memories are super powerful. They can hibernate and fester in our memories because our unconscious mind, like one of our jobs of our unconscious or subconscious mind, depending upon what you want to call it, one of its main things is to keep us safe. And so sometimes that safety also includes repressing memories until it feels safe for that memory to be exposed again, right? Or until it gets triggered by a life-changing event. So things that may not even seem like a quote unquote big deal, like finding an uncle's S&M magazine or accidentally turning on porn or, you know, those kinds of things can rattle around in your brain and can unconsciously affect what you feel comfortable with, what you explore, what you don't explore sexually with your partner, right? It can look like, you know, your best friend and you playing doctor and you got caught and you got spanked or punished or shamed around that. That could be affecting your ability to be vulnerable in an intimate situation. For people that have been in actual or near date rape situations, how does that affect your willingness and ability to open up or to meet new romantic partners? What if you touched your younger sibling inappropriately when they were in the bathtub? What if you had sexual thoughts that you knew were inappropriate, but you couldn't help it? Right? So these feelings of guilt, of shame that you're harboring from these events can be responsible for feelings of frigidity, for premature ejaculation, from vaginismus, right? Which is where the vagina contracts enough that penetration is actually impossible. Erectile dysfunction. So any ghosts coming from the past from the bedroom can show up even on an unconscious level when you're trying to be amorous with your partner. So how do you know whether or not something's still affecting you? So if while I'm talking about any of these things, if you felt your heart freeze, your breath change, a nervousness come up, right? If you felt a panic, you're still feeling or experiencing some kind of ill effect of some memory. So if these memories are really painful to revisit now, I really urge you to work with a professional. And during this class, if you start feeling triggered, emotional, remember that you're in the now, so you can just tap through the points, breathe, feel your feet, feel your bum in the chair. You can look around and just really look at colors, know that you're in the room, right? Keep yourself in your body and keep tapping. And if you need to stop the video, do that for yourself. It's more important to keep you safe than it is for you to finish this class. Okay. So there are some events you can work on by yourself. For example, my mentor talks about when she was younger, she'd witnessed men masturbating and exposing themselves in public, right? So she never really thought it was having any effect. But then because she just thought, oh, whatever, like that's happening. I can just walk by. It's not really impacting me. But when she thinks about it now, right, or before she did her work on it, she got really angry. Like, how could you do such a disgusting thing in front of me? Like, were you trying to get me turned on? Were you thinking I was going to be turned on? Was your intention to gross me out? Was your intention to use me as a fantasy for your masturbation? Like, what is that, right? So her anger and resentment started showing up in her marriage. So it also showed up in ways that weren't sexual. So what she says, I'm going to just read this here. She had a man in her life ask her to look at something that she wasn't ready at the time to look at. So he'd say something like, hey, honey, can you look at this proposal for me? And she'd feel irrationally and inexplicably angry because of the words and because of what she witnessed when she was younger, right? So sometimes these things that were like, why is this even bothering me, can come from these experiences that we think perhaps had no effect on us or shouldn't be having effect on us in this life, right? Because our unconscious mind creates connections. Like, hey, I'm not interested in this. I don't want to participate. Okay. So Alina said she started working on this and started working on it as a trauma and all of that clear. Trauma experts will now say that you only need 2 ingredients for the lasting impact of a traumatic memory: fear and hopelessness. And that's it. So if you experience fear, if you experience hopelessness, this can create a trauma. So behaviors, when we look at different sexual issues from a gender perspective, we see commonalities and different, right? Boys and girls both learned how to express sexuality through observing their role models, their parents, their teacher, movies, television. So combine that with their natural physical development, how the hormones are impacting the body, and their modeling starts getting shaped. But often that also comes from, more often it comes from parental influences as well, right? The media has these stereotypes that are replayed over and over and over. And none of the things that most people see prevent a really healthy or balanced picture of what a loving, accepting, and diverse and healthy sexual relationship can look like. So as we're growing up and as people start with early sexual behaviors, it can be fantasy. It can be masturbation or self-pleasuring, like a lot of people call it. But most of us are taught to keep it secret, right? Moral judgments, religious judgments, fear of getting caught, right? Parental attitudes. So even if it's supportive in a family household, it can still have a long lasting effect on how a developing person feels about their body, especially with regards to giving and receiving pleasure. So when we talk about self-pleasure, there can be a lot of stress associated with that, especially in early adolescence. Right? So maybe you had a magazine that you were looking at or videos, now the internet, right? And you hide it in what you think is somewhere really, really safe. But there's always this idea that, oh, I could get caught, it could get found, or it got moved, or what happened, right? We can have stress by trying not to make any sounds, trying to get it done as quickly as possible so we don't get caught. And so now your attention is split between the physical sensation and the pleasure and being super attuned to what's happening in the outside world, right? So we're almost training our bodies to bring stress into the pleasure of sexuality from a very, very young age because we didn't want to be exposed, right? So it created this tension, this pleasure, and this fear. And that sets up patterns that then prevent us from being fully relaxed when we're with our partner, or when we're receiving pleasure from our partner. Like, we should be done faster. What are they thinking? Right? There's this idea that we could get caught, even if we're totally and completely safe. Okay. So when we're young with masturbation, most of us, because of the fear of getting caught, because of judgment, because of time, because of whatever, we teach ourselves to reach climax very, very quickly before anyone discovers us, right? We develop our sexual activity around things that are not free, not open, that are very, very hidden, that are very secretive, that create guilt or that create shame, right? Which teaches us that there's something wrong and there's something dirty with sexuality. And for those of you that have had trauma or that have been embarrassed, you got caught, you got exposed, especially if you got guilted or shamed or in trouble around it, that can, as I mentioned, create premature ejaculation, vaginismus, inability to feel pleasure, inability to orgasm. So other people develop a different strategy, which is now it's exciting. So the dopamine hits, right? So they get the rush of hormones. They get like this adrenaline, like this is exciting. And it can be very, very stimulating. So some people like then, and it teaches their brain to look for these compromising circumstances to recreate or to create more excitement, more pressure, more, I want to get like, what would happen if I got caught, right? Having sex in places where they can get caught, doing things where they are exposed or exposing others. Okay. It's people that like do things on airplanes, do things in buses, right? Public parking lots, unisex restroom, right? Like all these things can be linked to these teenage explorations, right? And to these hormones, to this fear of getting caught and how we're training our brain. So I want to talk a little bit about sexual injury as well, according to the Institute. I'm blanking on what RAIN stands for. Anyway, I don't remember. Anyway, but every 6 to 8 seconds an American is sexually assaulted, right? 1 in 6 women, 1 in 33 men have experienced an attempted or completed rape during their college years. Among high school students surveyed, 8% report that they were forced into sex. And these are just the times that people are actually admitting that weren't blocked, that they're willing to recount. So just imagine what the real numbers might be. And so, as I mentioned earlier, the range of sexual injury can vary from very, very subtle, where people don't even report it, don't even consider it sexual injury, even though they're experiencing it as such in their body and in their mind, to the very, very incredibly violent. So, if you haven't been victimized, maybe your partner has been. Or maybe your sexual injury was being teased while you're going through puberty. Maybe people were staring at you, trying to touch you. Maybe they snapped for women, maybe they were snapping your bra or checking to see if you were wearing a bra, right? So some of these things aren't very violent, but it can still have a really profound and dramatic effect on how one integrates with their body. Okay. So even imagine this scenario. You're 10 years old, you're being bathed by your babysitter or your relative, or your family friend, and you just intuitively felt unsafe, right? Like as if a boundary was being crossed. Maybe you had some kind of preteen sleepover and one of the children was accidentally or maybe purposely trying to brush against you or grab you or snuggle up against you or press on you in a way that made you feel uncomfortable or violated, right? So we can sometimes disconnect this thinking, well, that wasn't a big deal. But our body and our mind remembering these things, right? And your earliest sexual experiences with another person can really have profound lingering effects, right? That fill us with fear, embarrassment. Sometimes our first sexual experiences, whether it's sexual injury or not, can be like fraught with like, what if I get pregnant? Or what if I get her pregnant? Right? This desire versus the pleasure, the emotions versus the decisions, the openness versus the ability to be vulnerable, the desire to say no and maybe feeling silly saying no or not knowing how to say no, right? So all of these things can have effects on our sexual being for a lifetime. So for the EFT work and for this change work to be really powerful, you want to look at not only the really painful sexually related stories that you have, but some of the more subtle ones. Some of these emotional connections that maybe you don't even realize are creating poor decisions now. So what I'm going to do is list like a list of scenarios that might be close enough in your personal history that may trigger some memories for you. So after you go to this class, after you listen to the recording, go ahead and journal on some of the possible following scenarios. Number one, have you been embarrassed? So this could be something like you suggested to your partner, something that you wanted to try, a position, a toy, a situation, and you were made to feel like your preferences were disgusting or wrong. Maybe you got embarrassed because someone saw your naked body at camp or in the shower, at the gym, and someone made fun of you verbally, emotionally, that you were too developed or not developed enough, right? Maybe you got embarrassed because your menstrual cycle came and you weren't prepared, or someone noticed you had your menstrual cycle, you didn't have the right supplies. Maybe embarrassment for you was being catcalled, being hit on, right? Maybe you had a wardrobe malfunction, right? This happens. These kinds of things happen, right? Pants fall down, people get pants, bras come off, like all these things, right? Swimsuits in the ocean or in the lakes or in pools, right? All these things. Maybe there was a time where you couldn't get turned on, or you thought someone was making a comment about your genitals, or you heard a rumor about yourself that was started by a disgruntled ex-partner, or maybe your partner said something about your performance that was meant or came across as hurtful, as critical, right? And so this embarrassment starts patterning. So now I want to give a few scenarios that may be more traumatic, that you may or may not have experienced personally. So be aware that these suggestions could be triggering. Once again, if you find yourself activated or upset or start having memories surface, stop the class, right? For those of you that are already working with me, bring it to your next session. If you need support in between your next session, please just reach out right away. Okay. So, have there been times in your past where you've been coerced sexually? Right? You didn't want to, but you kind of got either talked into it, forced into it, or maybe your no wasn't heard. Was there a time someone inappropriately exposed themselves to you without your permission? Was there a time you were grabbed, fondled, touched? And this can be even like on a bus, on a crowded subway, at a concert, at a bar, at a dance. Maybe you had an early sexual experience of being pressured to have intercourse before you're ready. Or someone came on forcefully for you and you felt overwhelmed or violated. Or even where you started having sex and you felt safe and then it became unsafe during. So maybe they weren't listening to you, it became painful. You asked them to stop and they didn't. Did you witness a violent sexual image or a scene in a movie or in pornography? Is there a person that still has some lingering in your mind when you think about sexuality? Now, we're going to talk about troublesome sexual moments within a romantic relationship. This is a big one when we start talking about infidelity, right? A lot of people have been cheated on, men and women alike. And the results, of course, we create mistrust within the relationship, but it also creates doubt about how desirable you are. It can create feelings of anger, of resentment, of hopelessness. You may or may not be able to communicate and repair the wound. But the thing is that so many people take this on as if I'm not good enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm too fat. I'm too ugly. I'm either not enough or I'm too much of whatever. Right. And then this gets carried from relationship to relationship and from sexual experience to sexual experience. Right. So we start getting jealous. We start projecting. We start wanting to hang on to our partners. Right. We don't trust. Other relationship traumas can be something that your partner did that you hadn't given permission for. Maybe you went along with, but didn't feel comfortable saying no to. Like right now, this is happening a lot in people having open relationships. Well, I guess it's okay. They asked, I'd rather have them in my life than not have them in my life. And if I say no, they might cheat on me anyway. So I guess I'll say okay, even though I don't mean it. How about sexual situations where you felt fear or lack of control? What about if someone broke your boundaries? So this could be parents even, right? Maybe your father walked around naked a lot or never locked the bathroom door. Okay? Left the door open while he's taking a shower. Maybe one of your siblings wasn't thinking about it, just walked around all the time, right? And you have these unexpected viewings, right? Maybe your mom or your dad or your guardian or whomever were trying to check you for physical changes. Maybe they're checking for tics, right? And however they were doing it violated your sense of privacy, right? This can happen for women, like their mom's taking bra shopping and then all of a sudden the mom's like pushing things around and trying to feel like, let me look, let me feel, like, so it doesn't even have to be the opposite sex. It could be the same sex, right? It could be the same gender. So maybe they just walked in on you in your bedroom all the time, didn't give you privacy. Maybe they were reading your diary or their journal, right? So a lot of these things can start setting up challenges around your own personal boundaries and your ability there. So think about those kinds of situations for yourself as well. So where else in your sexuality or in your reproduction situations do you feel guilt or shame? So for some people, this is a past abortion for themselves or for one of their partners. Maybe your partner had an abortion and you weren't told about it and you would have wanted the child, but your partner didn't, and you didn't find out till later. Or maybe you knew about it and you still feel guilt, shame, or the burden of responsibility. Maybe your shadow side or what's underneath there is exploring someone with the same sex. Right? That's not that uncommon. And some people, because of their religious or moral backgrounds, feel shame about it. Maybe you're worried about having homosexual tendencies. Maybe you feel the burden of holding yourself responsible for a sexual advance by another person, right? You dressed up all nice and then you got advanced on or touched and you were holding on to it as if it's your fault, as if you provoked it or invited it by the way you acted, by the way you dressed, by the way you touched somebody, right? Oh, I touched somebody on the arm. They took that as if I was flirting with them or as a come on. And now then I had to deal with the repercussions of that, right? And this can be something little, right? Like the Me Too movement was going on and some people got really, really pulled back and just stopped touching. And other people were like, oh, are you gonna, like I had this happen at the ski hill. People were like, oh yeah, me too. And slap my ass like, ha ha ha. It's like, wow, okay, that's really interesting, right? And it was like their own awkwardness around how they could interact with me the way they used to interact with me, which was not slapping my ass, but like people used to like snuggle up on the bench and share beers and all this kind of stuff. But all of a sudden, like the Me Too movement happened and it created this awkwardness that actually created people violating boundaries more as if they were like testing to see where they could be with that, right? So there's different ways that people express when they're fearful, when they're shameful, right? Do go towards or go away? How do I know that people are setting boundaries? Do I trust other people to set boundaries? So when you examine your sexual experiences, are there negative emotions that need to be released? Like, are you judging yourself now as an adult because you had sex too young? Or do you regret the circumstances of your sexual encounters? Were things painful or risky? Did you get an STD? Right? Did you feel like a complete idiot because you didn't know what you were doing? Did you try to imitate something? Did you do it with someone you shouldn't have? Were you dumped because you did or didn't do something? Did you get an infection? Did you have to confront your parents? Did you have to tell a pediatrician or go to Planned Parenthood? And so what are these experiences that you've had? Because the lingering sexual traumatic memories, right? All the stuff that happened in childhood, shameful feelings of pleasure, your experiences that you had as an adolescent, your experiences that you've had now, all of this creates multiple layers in your system. Okay. And often these have to be addressed by a professional if they're not something more neutral. The more traumatic the event, the greater it is to isolate the specifics of the event. So for example, when we work on trauma, it's not like, tell me about your rape. It's like, okay, let's talk about step one, being out on the date. Okay, let's tell the story. Like, let's clear everything around the red flags that you missed or that you felt and ignored, right? The things you thought you should have done and you didn't do in the moment, right? The way your no wasn't heard, like all of these things, the sounds, the feelings, the sensations, like all of these get to be cleared in order to fully clear the trauma. Okay. So working with survivors of childhood sexual abuse and related aftermath, like that's the way that we do it. Right. So what's it like? So I heard them coming up the stairs. Okay, let's clear that first. Okay, I heard the door open. That's a trauma because your body knows that when the door opens, the next step's going to happen. So we work that piece. Right. So all of these little layers are really important for fully clearing trauma. Okay. So how does one come to healing? It is possible. It is super possible. In fact, when I was in London for an EFT, for the EFT International Conference, there was a woman that came up, and her mom started selling her at the age of 4. And so she saw, felt, experienced horrendous things. She did her own work, right? She saw a psychotherapist and did emotional freedom techniques, right? She said sometimes she was tapping like 2 hours a day to release the trauma. And now she has a happy, healthy relationship. She's fully sexual free. She wrote a book about her experience of healing. Like, it is possible for anyone. It really is. Right. And healing does not forgive what happened to you. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, you can forgive, you can let go without saying like what they did was okay. Right. So you choosing to heal, you choosing to let go, you choosing to take care of yourself in these ways and find forgiveness doesn't excuse what happened. Right. It doesn't mean that you have to go confront the person. It doesn't mean any of that. All it means is that you get to let it go out of your body. You get to let it go out of your mind. Because you've let things go before, haven't you? You can. You can let things go, you know. You can do it now. You can do it in 5 minutes from now. You can do it in a day from now. But you get to let go of these things easily, effortlessly. It's all possible. Healing is possible for you. So I invite you to start exploring the memories that you can safely process. And that can mean thinking about being in the bedroom with my husband last night. That can mean thinking about having sex for the first time with my partner that I'm dating. That can mean thinking about telling my partner that I want to try a new position, or that the position we've been doing actually is painful and I've just never bothered saying anything because I thought they enjoyed it, right? So we can look at these things and start working on our own fears, on our own memories, and really come to a place where we can heal ourselves. So we can experience more pleasure, more enjoyment, more connection, more love. Because you deserve that, right? So this is the end of the course, but it's only the beginning of your healing journey, right? So this course has been a template of things to look at, things to structure. We've explored a lot of the aspects that inhibit full and free sexual expression and intimacy, and I've given you some different ways to incorporate EFT and matrix reimprinting in resolving some of these negative emotions and past negative experiences. And you get to take this forward. You get to keep doing your work in whatever way feels helpful for you, right? Because healing your sexual wounds can lead to profound transformation in all areas of your life, in your self-confidence, in your weight, in your ability to speak up at work, right? Because if you didn't feel safe speaking up in the bedroom at one point in time, this may be coming out when you're talking to your boss or your coworker. It may be showing up in the way that you try to work out, but you can't lose weight, or you lose weight and you put it back on, right? Because weight is associated with safety sometimes. If I have weight, it's not only a barrier, right? But it's an unconscious way sometimes of believing that we're less attractive and we're going to draw less attention, thus keeping us more safe. So as we start working with these things and continue working with these things, you'll be amazed at how your life changes. So I encourage you, when you need support, reach out to me, reach out to somebody else. Even if you're not my client, send me a text, send me an email. I'm not good at checking emails. So if it's really important, text me as well. But connect. I've got a bunch of other resources. I've got YouTube videos out there. I do classes. I'm starting some group stuff. I do individual sessions with people. I do programs. I do full day breakthrough sessions. I do half day breakthrough sessions. So we can work with whatever you need to. Okay. So with that note, just remember you're loved, you're loving, you're lovable. You deserve to heal. You get to heal in whatever way that looks for you. So thanks for joining me on this class. I'd love to hear your feedback so I can make this class better for others. Take care of yourself. Mm-hmm.